Here we go. Another feisty chess game, 15-10 against Govin Chandhok. Let's go with e5. Usual open game here. And knight c6. Now it's up to white. We've got an Italian, so we're going to have a 2 knights defense. And I like to see knight g5 here. Yes. Okay. I'm going to try the Fritz variation again. Lost a key game recently in the Fritz. A lot of times white doesn't know this variation too well. Usually they'll find c3 here, which is the main move. Okay. I think this is pretty toothless, actually. It's been a while since I've seen this. I need to take, so let's go ahead and take. And probably here comes d6. If he thinks about anything else, I'm going to play b5. So if he tries maybe c3 now, I've got b5. Yeah. And this bishop can't stay on that diagonal. We're playing against Govind Chandhok. I think we're just up a piece here. If he tries to stay on the diagonal with bishop b3, I just take off the bishop, and after queen recaptures on b3, I just go bishop d6, and there's no more discovered attack. There's no more checks. Actually, I can slide my rook. Okay, demonstrate this here. I don't need to worry about protecting that pawn. Let's just get castled by hand. Try to cash in our extra bishop. Rook looks good on the f-file. We'll get our king to g8, maybe h8. There's no rush here. I was considering bishop b7, but after c4, I can't take because the bishop is in a pin. Okay, we might as well harass that queen a little bit. Connect our back rank. develop the bishop. Now the king's very happy on g8. We're going to go ahead and play e4. Open up the bishop's attack on h7. h2, I should say. We might be able to go for that right away. Bishop takes h2, knight g5 check, follow with queen h4. Our rook is even on the f-file there. We're already up a piece. We can sacrifice it for an attack. That looks like the fun way to proceed here. Bishop takes h2, king takes h2, knight g4 check. If he goes back to g1, then queen h4. He's got to go rook e1. But then our queen is hitting both f2 and g2. So that's got to be curtains for him. Okay, so bishop takes h2, king takes h2, knight g4 check, king g3. h3 is bad because it's right in the discovery of the bishop. King g3, and then maybe queen g5, and that gets interesting. We're setting up discoveries. d4, knight e3 check. Looks like it wins. Looks like there's a mate on g2 at the end there. Or somewhere. Let's go for it. Might as well finish this game in style rather than grind down the win with the extra piece. We were down 3 pawns for the piece, I suppose. White's queenside is just completely asleep. If he goes king h1, I might just play knight g4 anyway. Planning queen h4, but then he's got g3. I've just got so much firepower I can bring to bear here. No, he doesn't have g3 then, because his rook is unguarded. I can just take on g3 with the bishop. He can't recapture with the f-pawn. So to show all this, king h1, knight g4, we'll look at it in the analysis. Let's just get on with the attack here. Okay, so I was looking at queen g5. That looked good enough. There's also h5, but then he can swing his rook to h1. So I think queen g5, and there's no way for him to get out of that discovery. And if he tries to unleash his bishop, I've got knight e3, which at the very least I can grab the queen on c2 after that, and then the rook on a1. But I shouldn't need to. This should finish matters. He can take the pawn on e4, but I still win his queen. So here comes the queen, g5. This reminds me of a King's Gambit or a Vienna game I played early on in this channel, where I had a similar discovered check, where the knight gave a discovered check from the queen, and it blocked an attack from a bishop on the queen at the same time. And it led to, not directly to mate, but it led to me winning the black queen in that game. So it's kind of like a mirror image of that game, actually. Yeah, king to h3 gets out of one discovery and steps into another, and that's the only legal move his king can make right now. So probably d3 or d4. If he pushes f4, I didn't think about this, I can take en passant, and I'm still threatening discoveries. And that frees up the f2 square, but that doesn't matter because my knight covers the f2 square. So his king still has no places he can go legally after f4. E takes f4 en passant. Okay. White saw what I saw and decided to throw in the towel just to carry this forward a bit. Let's look at bishop d4. And I'm hitting the queen here, and then ultimately the rook after he takes my queen. But say he steps to, he goes to h2, there's just mate on g2. Actually, that's the only legal move. So quite simple. Very devastating Greek gift here with the bishop. The line I was looking at was if king here, same thing. And if he tries to, say, trap this bishop, I can just take, and I'm coming in with the queen on h4 next move. If he tries this, then it's just rook takes, and this should be winning pretty easily, probably mating. My queen f6, just threatening a mate here, and then coming here. Okay. Back to the beginning. We won't use the computer. Well, we should use the computer here. Let's analyze. Pretty exciting game. Can end pretty quickly. A lot of these Fritz variations, there's this full of traps for white. This is not a route I've seen the things go. A lot of people aren't aware that the Fritz variation is a thing, that it's a playable move, knight to d4. They're only familiar with knight a5, which is the main line of all this, and they probably got pet systems ready for that, but they're not ready for knight to d4. Most people also aren't ready for b5 immediately, the Ulvestad variation, which can transpose to the Fritz. Fritz is trickier because you're making white find a move that's trickier to find if he doesn't know these lines. So knight takes f7 is a clear blunder. He's just down a piece. He's got two pawns here. And if you're going to play this line, you might as well play d6 now to try to open things up. But in that line, I can just block with bishop to e6. I'm getting my pieces out. He can draw my king out by taking, but he doesn't have, my king is relatively safe on the light squares. White's development is just barely started. The bishop was his only piece that had been developed. So And he's not even going to win a pawn from this exchange, because I'll just take with the queen. So knight f7 is not the right move, but I think if you don't know that knight to d4 is a legit variation, you might think, well, the knight f7 must work here, like it works in the fried liver. The fried liver, which I never recommend going into as black, but if you're a computer, you could play it, is knight takes d4. Knight takes d5 here. Looks like it works, checks out okay, but the problem is knight to f7, and then following up with queen f3 check, hitting both the knight and the king, so the king has to move to protect the knight. Notice that the knight is pinned, he can't drop back. So the king comes up here, and white continues to pile pressure on this knight. Black has to defend. He's got lots of moves he can defend d5 with, but white already has a pawn for this knight, and he's going to have an easy time castling, bringing a rook to the e-file. Black's the one struggling here. You don't want to have to play this, even though you're a piece up, especially in a short game. So knight to d4, the Fritz variation, is an old favorite of mine. And I've seen this before. I mean, for some reason, people think, oh, I can just do the fried liver thing. But it doesn't work out. c3 is a nice try, I suppose. Maybe expecting bishop d6 here. I wonder what the evaluation looks like after bishop d6. It's a blunder. But still black is slightly better. We can open up the e-file, and now we're threatening to bring a rook here. But white just castles. And the pawns, the actual material is equal here. I think black's a little better. I would rather play black. But, I mean, he's just developed a little better. And the pawn structure looks better. So, yeah. But knight takes f7. Because of this, the b5. And this is sort of the main line of the Fritz. He's thrown in a knight sacrifice when he doesn't need to. If he still had that knight on g5 and my king was back on e8, if he'd played c3 a move earlier, we would have gone into the main lines of the Fritz, in which white gets to keep the pawn, but black has kind of a wild initiative, and black's king ends up stuck in the center, but it's playable. It's very playable. He needs to go back to f1 here. And that's actually the main line in the main move in the main line as well. Bishop to f1. So it's very counterintuitive to play your bishop back to f1. The problem is you bring it back to b3, I can trade my knight off for it. If you bring it to e2, I'm going to trade my knight off for it there. And if you bring it to d3, it blocks the d pawn in the development. So, yeah, the Fritz is tricky. You've got to know the lines to really play it well. Oh, queen takes d5. That would have been simple as well. We wouldn't have had the flashy finish if I had traded queens or tried to trade queens. And yeah, bishop takes h2. 19-point advantage. Pretty simple Greek gift here. And let's look at this line. We looked at the other lines of after king g3. But if this queen h4 is just a mate in 3, because my rook is open, thanks to knight takes f7 earlier. So he's going to get mated on h2 unless he moves this rook away. And he has to move the rook away, but then the mate is just postponed a move. And we're going to grab that rook and say checkmate anyway. So that's the game. White ran into a deadly attack pretty quickly. So thanks for the game. I'm going to try to pronounce your name again. Govind Chandok. Thank you for the game, and we will check you all later. Stay feisty, guys.